Hello, you're watching Leaders Speak Easy with me, Lukman Haris.
And me, Rosina Aziz.
Rosina is the co-founder and CEO of Metamorphosa, a former news, media and corporate woman who now mentors, coaches, trains and consults global leaders and entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Lukman. Today we will have a conversation on empowering future female leaders. First, an introduction on our guest.
Lean in Malaysia is a not-for-profit organisation for women and men from all walks of life to understand the challenges and opportunities presented to the modern-day woman and how addressing them can create a more inclusive society. Taking cue from Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In, Women, Work and the Will to Lead, the organisation focuses on adjustments women can take to be more empowered in the decisions they make based on two key challenges today: the high dropout rates of women from the workforce and the declining pipeline of women talent in senior management. Sarah Chen and Abir Abdul Rahim chose very different career paths. With a bachelor's degree in actuarial science, Abir chose a corporate career in the insurance industry, while Sarah, with a legal background from King's College UK, previously built a career in the world of venture capitalism in Asia and the US. But their passion for empowering more female leaders proved to be their true calling, when, in 2015, both women came together and founded Lean In Malaysia.
Sarah and Abe, welcome to Leaders Speak Easy with Lukman and Rosina.
Thank you.
Hi there. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Sarah, especially for joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. Let's kick off by discussing your leadership mantra.
So you both chose, as we've heard, a very different career path. So Abe, you had a bachelor's degree in actuarial science and you chose a corporate career in the insurance industry here in Malaysia. And Sarah, you've got a legal background with an LLB from King's College in the UK, and you've built a career in venture capital and innovation in Asia and the US. So here's our questions. As young female leaders, what leadership mantra or core values do you both share, and what makes each of you unique from one another, and those differences, how do they work for you?
Maybe I can start first.
Abir, do you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Rosina and Lukman, for having us. I think it's such a great honor to share about Lean in Malaysia's achievements for the past 7 years since 2015. And happy to also share how Sarah Chen and myself both started out. I think it happened over a cup of coffee 7 years ago in a normal cafe in town. And we spoke about our common passion, which is women empowerment and gender diversity and inclusion. So going back to what you asked, Rosina, what are some of our common values that we share? I would point out two things. Number one, authenticity, and number two, common purpose. When you are authentic in the cause that you're championing, I think great things can happen. And so those are the things that both Sarah and myself share, and we have carried those values with us for the past 7 years of running Lean in Malaysia to the level that it is today. So, Sarah, maybe you want to share as well?
Yeah, maybe Sarah can share with us some of the differences and how they work for you.
Oh. Well, let me start with just expanding a little bit on Abir's point there. The fact that we both came together with a common purpose, and the fact that, we were ambitious young women. When we started, we were in our 20s, guns blazing, ready to take on the world. And unfortunately, in many ways, the world was not ready for us. And that was the world that we wanted to change ourselves. The fact that Abir, at the end of a meeting would get personal questions on her marriage status, which signaled to us that, the ring on a woman's finger was more important than her career success. And the same was not being asked of men. And myself, in venture capital, I started my career in a public listed company in Malaysia, where we were spinning off a venture capital unit. And I was the only woman in the deals and transactions team for the longest time. And what I saw, actually, to share with you, Rosina, a very sort of down to earth, grounded example that I think many of the viewers would relate to is at 5 p.m. sharp, the women that I would work with in the ancillary team, so sort of the technical diligence folks, scientists, engineers, some of the smartest women I was working with would check out at 5 p.m. because, of course, it was expected that they would take care of domestic responsibilities. But guess what? I was working with married men as well. And then, I was a single career woman, and I was able to take meetings at 8 p.m., calls at 2 a.m. because we were working with American counterparts at that time. But of course, the women who were married, who had all these responsibilities, what we call the double burden, in the household, were excluded. And this phenomenon, over time, I realized that these same women were not getting the keys to the corner office. And Abir and I sat together over that same cup of coffee and discussed little things like this and decided that, hey, we wanted to do something about this. And so we, brought together men and women around in Malaysia to speak about what a path that would include, leadership looks like, and how can we, really create the best of all opportunities, which included women. And, to your point on sort of differences, I think Abir and I are different people. We're different leaders in that, we approach things differently. In some way, I think we complement each other. But most importantly, I think we come together, despite the differences, to also think big, right? I think the idea of Lean In really came from a concept of, circles of women coming together to talk about their ambitions. But that was not enough for Abir, myself, and the founding committee. We thought that, yes, this is important to have women to mentor each other, to coach each other through the different challenges. But, the system needed to change as well. And speaking in echo chambers was not enough. So we brought, her sort of energy and I guess my depth of thinking in different issues into what is really, I think, a tactical and systematic approach to women empowerment in Malaysia. And it is what it is today. And we decided to do it big from day one to scale to become what it is today.
So let's talk about the impact of the pandemic on women. According to a 2020 McKinsey report, it found that during the pandemic, women's jobs were twice as vulnerable as a man's job. And if we were to do nothing, global GDP in 2030 would be $1 trillion less than if men and women had been equally affected in the workplace during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in contrast, if we act now to improve gender parity by 2030, global GDP could be $13 trillion higher, with higher female-to-male labor force participation and hundreds of millions of new jobs for women. So Sarah, let me start with you. How can Lean In Malaysia contribute in addressing the gender disparity issue and heighten the impact on women's participation in employment here at home?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Such an important one. And, it's really sad and unfortunate that we've taken what seems like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, right? And with Lean In, I think, the core of what we do is really education, awareness, and really scaling women, accelerating women into leadership, right? And I think we can continue to do that, and we are continuing to do that. In fact, I'm happy to share during the time of a pandemic in the last couple of years, we continued on with our signature career accelerator program, what we call the Lean In Career Program, which was targeting women that were dropping out of the workforce. As you may know, Rosina and also Luqman, one of the key issues in Malaysia is that we were noticing women dropping out from the workforce because of domestic responsibilities, the double burden that we talked about. And of course, with the pandemic, now it's a triple burden, right? She's taking care of the household, she's taking care of the kids. She also has a job to balance because, hey, a double income is almost necessary now in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, where we're living in today's reality. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot on the shoulders of women. And I think, what we've done with the Lean In Career Program, which is to get women that were furloughed or were thinking about what next for their career, through a really structured program, whether that's a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on the cohort, to actually connect with employers and to upskill even as they're, figuring out what next for themselves. I think that's one of the key things that we can continue to do to continue the discourse, number one, to serve as a platform for women who want to advance despite the challenges, and number two, to actually curate these programs that will actually connect with employers and actually get women back in jobs that they deserve.
Yeah. So, Abe, Lean in Malaysia has 7,000 members who are connected to a network of 300,000 men and women across Asia. Your vision is to reduce the employment dropout rate among women and boost the talent pipeline for women in senior leadership. What challenges did your members face during the pandemic, and what measurable impact has Lean in Malaysia had on them at different levels of organizations?
Thank you, Luqman. I think I'm very happy to share the observation that we've had from our conversations with our members before this. One common challenge that our members face during the pandemic is basically the productivity level at both personal and professional parts of their lives. Going back to what Sarah Chen has mentioned as well, dual income households seems more intense during the pandemic, with women having to burden more household chores when they are at home because of the cultural expectations that are set upon us, right? And because of this triple burden or double burden that Sarah mentioned earlier, this eventually leads to more women dropping out of the workforce during the pandemic because of the strain on their mental health as well as their emotional needs, right? So allow me to share a bit of the statistics by our Department of Statistics in Malaysia based on Q4 2021. Women, okay, this is just last year, Q4, women only make up 38.8% of female participation, labour participation in Malaysia. So that is 38.8% of formal workplace of female participation in the labour force in Malaysia. And whilst among women with young children, if you read the report published by McKinsey and Lean Org last year, 25% of them say that they may take a leave of absence or quit altogether. So that is 38.8% of female participation in the labour force in Malaysia. So allow me to also share how much of these female actually make up of the population that is outside of the labour force, which accounts to 68.7%. Which is equivalent to 5.06 million persons.
Right.
So compared to other male counterparts, they comprise of only 31.3% of folks outside of the labour force, which is equals to 2.31 million persons. So taking all this in and how Lean in Malaysia respond to improve the situation, allow me to expand what Sarah Chen mentioned as well, is that we offer programs, we offer unique programs such as Lean in Masterclass, which is the discourse that we have with experts, to talk about the current issues and eventually provide a support system to our members to share their own experiences with each other, and we invite experts to offer professional guidance and professional help. Right. So when you have a support system in these trying times, it is very impactful and powerful to know that you're not in this alone. On top of that, we also run Lean in Career Program, which Sarah mentioned earlier. Lean in Career Program is basically our mentorship accelerator that we run virtually over a few weeks. And we focus to get more women back to the workforce. And how we run Lean in Career Program is that we focus on two things, right? For these women who want to get back to the workforce, number one, based on their functional needs, and number two, based on their emotional needs. Yep. So like what Sarah mentioned, I think last year's cohort that we ran, it was in its sixth installment. We had around 45% of participants managed to secure jobs back, to get back to the workforce. So it is very important for us to continue these kind of programs to make sure that women's voices are heard and women take up space in the leadership positions.
So 2022 is expected to be a better year with over 24 million Malaysians fully vaccinated, 12 million boosted, more employees returning to offices, and travel SOPs easing. So, Abe, very briefly, what trends do you foresee for women this year?
So what I foresee is that we are in fact regressing compared to progressing to achieve the gender parity gap. And women especially, right, have experienced disproportionate effects of the pandemic from the angles of job security, income, family roles, health, and social. So what we also saw in the past couple of years is that the pandemic has basically shifted the way that we work and the way that we live, right? So because of this, what we foresee more women, especially working mothers, is that they would be demanding hybrid working arrangements from their employers because it has worked for most of them during the pandemic. And if companies fail to continue on with this flexibility, they will then tend to face a higher attrition level, especially from their female talent. There will also be a greater demand. On top of that, there will also be a greater demand should they are being requested to get back to the office, and a greater push for the government and employers to support them with safe childcare facilities. Yeah. What that means is childcare centers that are strict with SOPs and safe from all of the news and articles that we've been reading about informal childcare places. When we have this kind of arrangement, right, Luqman, at workplaces, women can eventually have a level playing field as with their male counterparts, because now that everything has moved online and we will no longer miss out on networking events that usually ends at midnight that we can't go to.
Yep. Rosie?
I think we need to go to break. Stay with us for more conversation on empowering future female leaders with Sarah Chan and Abe Abdurrahim.
Semua yang terjadi adalah berita, tetapi tiada siapa yang boleh bawakan yang terkini dan tergempar seperti kami.
Dilihat hanya memberi wang tanpa matlamat yang tepat.
Dia tidak melakukan apa-apa kesalahan.
Untuk mendapatkan jawapan yang bermakna, kita perlu soalan yang tepat.
Amat sedih dengan apa yang berlaku ke atas.
Tiada ruang untuk berita palsu.
Negara kita telah merekodkan kes harian baru sebanyak
hanya fakta yang diberikan.
Amat penting untuk meneruskan perjuangan negara melawan pandemik ini.
Sentiasa memastikan suara anda, suara rakyat didengari.
Kenapa?
Membawakan apa yang penting di mana sahaja anda berada.
Kerana kita hendak putuskan rantaian jangkitan.
Belanjawan dan pendekatan bertemakan survival ini secara keseluruhan.
Teruskan bersama kami, Astro AWANI, saluran berita yang paling dipercayai rakyat Malaysia.
You are back with Leader Speakeasy with Luqman and Rosina in conversation with Sarah Chen and Abe Abdurrahim, the co-founders of Lean in Malaysia.
Let's talk about empowering future female leaders. So data cites with higher participation of females in business. The same McKinsey report found that the top 25% of companies in terms of gender diversity amongst its executive teams were 25% more likely to have above average profitability as compared to those in the lowest quartile. And here in Malaysia, according to the 30% Club Malaysia, in 2021, only 26% of the top 100 Bursa Malaysia listed companies have female board members. Yet, return on equity is 38% higher for companies with female board representation. So what are the major stumbling blocks that affect female participation at executive and board levels, other than what we talked about, the burden of family?
Thanks for the question, Rosina. I believe we can look at this issue from two points here, right? And the two major factors that are stumbling blocks is, number one, we go back to our cultural and societal expectations of a women's role. And number two is our internal own biases that are deeply ingrained in the system, especially at workplaces. So allow me to expand a bit on these 2 points, right? On expectations, quoting an article that I read online, men are still far more likely to have the freedom to stay late at the office, travel for work, or enjoy informal evening meetings with colleagues or their own clients. And these realities that men get add up to opportunities, especially in the Asian context, whereby we value highly on networking and business relationships to help us climb up the career ladder. So when women miss this kind of opportunities, we miss out on a lot of things to help us climb the career ladder, to help us get that promotion, to help us get a seat at the table. Then the second one is when we look at our own internal biases, where employers fail to recognize their own biases. So for example, Rosina, when it comes to, like, for example, their own female staff and female candidates that they want to hire and promote, questions like, is she going to get married? If I hire her, will she take maternity leaves? If I promote her, will she be able to focus 100% at work? Or does she want to spend more time with her own family members? These are the questions, Rosina, that our male counterparts do not get, upon promotion or upon being hired. So what I'm trying to say here is that we need to start changing the narrative in order to achieve equality and close that gender gap for the benefits of everyone.
So Sarah, based on your experience across Malaysia, Asia and also the US, what do aspiring and future female leaders need to do to break the gender bias in business and success all the way to the top?
Oh, Lokman, thank you for that question. I've been waiting for that one because I think what really needs to happen here is a reframe of this question, right? Trust me, if it was up to us women to break the gender bias and to change the reality, this would have happened a long time ago. And that's why, what Abir said is so important, that it really depends on working with everyone, right? It needs to be, I believe really that we need to work with the system to change the system, but it's about time that the system changes for women to accommodate women. And the reality of the pandemic has shown that, hey, there are ways to be able to do that, the in-person sort of networking, socializing can be done in different ways, which do not exclude women from being part of these important conversations and from the visibility that she deserves. Because guess what? Women are doing the work, have been doing the work, and deserve to be accelerated into leadership because they have all the capabilities, right? We've been told for so long that women are not confident, we don't have the skill sets, we need to go for board trainings, this and that. Where are the men being trained for board directorship positions? Guess what? Women can learn on the job too, and we need to change this narrative. And really, I think, therefore, I like to urge two things, right? From an organization standpoint, before I actually go into what future female leaders can do. Number one is to actually acknowledge the fact that the unequal playing field really exists. Everything that Abir spoke about, the fact that during the peak of a woman's career is often when our biological, sort of requirements come into play, i.e. having a child. And, the responsibilities of, the domestic and the household and also caring for elderly parents still today falls upon the women. Why is it that way? For as long as I can remember, when we talked about family, it involves everyone as part of that, right? There are two parents for most of us, and we're lucky for, to be able to do that. Women today are still not being judged fairly, and having 50% of women in your workforce means nothing if they're not actually progressing into the later stages. And guess what? The hint is it is not women's fault, and we don't need to change the women. Secondly, we need to actually look into the decision-making lens and culture within your company. What does that mean? What does patterns of success look like to you? Does it look like you and I, or what are the biases that exist and stereotypes that exist that potentially hold women back? And from a personal standpoint, finally, for the women out there, as someone who's often the first and only in many rooms still to today, number one, I would say recognize your worth, right? If you're being invited into a room, use your voice, leverage your voice. You're there for a reason, and do the work. Number two is lean into your voice, right? We talk about this, leveraging your voice. Their action doesn't happen at the periphery of the room. And this doesn't mean being rude or being abrasive, but being tactical about where you are and where you can be, and really dreaming big. I think, the big thing, to come back to where we started, Rosie and Lokman, is Abir and I sincerely believe that the world, to use, the world peace sort of example, but the world is truly a lot better when we tap into the extra 50% of the population that's not being tapped into, the talent that's not being realized. And we're already seeing the results, right? Investing in women is good for business, and we need to continue to do that.
Yep.
So Lean in Malaysia has partnered with big names like Google, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, HSBC, Nomura and EcoWorld to further the diversity, inclusion and equity, or DEI agenda. So Abe, maybe you take this question. When measuring real impact, what has the partnerships achieved, and what filters do you use in supporting your members, for example, age, ethnicity, language, social background, areas of expertise and such?
So firstly, we do want to thank our partners and sponsors who've been supporting us since day one, right? We started off in 2015. Some partners have stayed with us since then for the past 7 years. They offer us resources that has enabled us to run our programs without any worries because, as you know, Lean in Malaysia is a voluntary platform. So one of the pillars that we spoke about just now is that we want to help empower women by offering them mentorship. We do believe in mentorship for women to unlock their fullest potential and to climb that career ladder. So when companies collaborate with us, they are indirectly mentors and sponsors to these women outside of their own organizations and women who participate in our Lean career programs to get back to the workforce. And at the same time, companies also offer professional guidance and opportunities for women to take up leadership space at workplaces. And at the same time, this partnership allows us in this ecosystem to share best practices. So when we have that dialogues and discourse with all of these invited partners and sponsors, companies share their best practices, especially, for example, on policies, right? What sort of family-friendly policies that they have implemented in their company that another company can basically adopt. Not just family-friendly policies, but also sexual harassment policies. And this is very important in order for all of us collectively to move towards the progression of diversity and inclusion, not just in our own organizations, but also, you know, at the national scales. So Lean in Malaysia, we benefit from what works, what doesn't work, and we learn from their leadership at the same time. And that's how we benefit from the partnership with a lot of these companies, Rosina.
So ladies, we will now move on to the last part, which is the quick-fire questions because we're running out of time. So you only have 20 seconds to answer each question.
Right, in this segment, we'll ask each of you a question for our viewers to get a chance to get to know you guys more up close and personal. So Rosie, you go first.
Sarah, if you can choose one climate to spend the rest of your life in, which would you choose? American weather, which part of America, or Malaysian weather?
Oh, good question. Well, my ideal location to be doing the work that I'm doing, because I actually genuinely love the work I'm doing, is by the beach. So wherever there's beach weather, I'm there.
Well, we have beach weather here times 100. It's about 36 degrees every single day. But okay, fair enough. So
with
Abe,
a bit of breeze, you know.
Talking about the beach, Abe, I'd like to get into your mind. If you're stranded on a desert island and you can bring 3 things, what would you bring?
Wow. So I will bring... That's a great question. So I will basically bring a book, a novel that probably, you know, that I want to read and read and read over again. Second is I would bring my own camping gears for my own survival on the deserted island. And the third one would be I will bring a friend. You know, because I wouldn't want to be alone because, alone you won't get far. And together, I think we can achieve so much more on that particular deserted island as well.
So would that friend be Sarah?
I would say so, Sarah. Yeah. We've got the beach and everything, so we're set there.
Sarah's okay because the beach weather will be just right. So a big thank you to the co-founders and board of advisors of Lean in Malaysia, Sarah Chen and Abe Abdul Rahim, for an insightful conversation of empowering more female leaders for the future.
Be sure to join us on Leader Speakeasy with Luqman and Rosina for conversations on leadership as the country and the world strive to bounce back from the pandemic. I'm Luqman Haris.
And I'm Rosina Aziz, wishing you the very best in your career, business and leadership journey. Stay safe, stay resilient.